Hey everybody, my name is Alexis Flores, and this is Communications AF, a real talk, more communicating. Every single episode, I'll be talking to some brilliant, influential, and kind new and old friends about personal life stories, career moves, and everything else. And tonight, we'll be talking to Dominique Nieves, a Latina actress, entertainer, and entrepreneur. She's the founder of Iron Glove Productions, for which she writes, directs, produces award-winning films, and was awarded the top 6% for NBC's Writers on the Verge. And if that's not enough, she's also a two-time Ivy League grad with real medical experience. Dominique takes pride in combining entertainment and activism. Her most recent narrative film she directed highlights the toxic effects of hypermasculinity has on a young boy who hides his emotions behind a Dominican carnival mask. And she started her own industry insider show, where she interviews professionals in the entertainment industry, hyper-focused on the Latinx community. This is part 2 of our conversation with Dominique Nieves.
Yeah.
Your first film, if you take your action figure and you go, hey, I'm Dominique, hey, I'm Alexis, and then you record those shots and you go into, and it can be iMovie, go into iMovie and edit it and notice, my continuity is really off. And I was just using action figures. Oh, those two shots don't really line up together. This angle, what is it telling me? Now, and get some free music off the internet, which you can do. They have free music. Put it in. You start learning all these little skills.
Yeah.
You look at the frame. This frame is really empty. It would have been nice if I had something in the background about the character. That's production design. And I think, you don't have to be the best at every single thing, but I like having a little bit of knowledge of all of the roles, because that's how I can be a good director on set.
Yeah,
that's helped me out. Understanding what your crew is going through, understand that your crew needs more time for something, being an AD made me really prepared.
Yeah.
And all of that I did, as I always said, I made it myself.
Yeah.
Right. People are like, how did you get that? So someone asked me like, wait, industry insider, how did you get it? I was like, I literally made it myself.
It's I will say this. Well, one, you are such a kind person that like I saw it off the bat when we first met. The fact that you still like messaged us after we met, the fact that you invited us to see your movie that had came out last year. So it's like, wow, she's like still like, yeah, it's promoting you, but it's also taking the time to like invite me. Like you only met me once, and even though it's a promotion, it's still like, it made me feel like, okay, cool, I can have this connection with her.
Yeah, I remember our conversation too. It was really cute. We were at the table and we were talking about networking. It was awesome.
Yeah. And then just seeing your industry insider, I was like the fact that she's doing this, it's like her creating, and I want to, wait, this is my other question also.
Yeah.
Are you a grad student right now?
I am. Yes, I have lectures to get back to later.
Because I know this is like kind of a project that you're doing with your professor, that you're the TA, right?
Oh, so that's actually, I'm in medical school.
Okay.
I know, right? Like, why not? So that, I'm not the only one who decided to like pay it back. So Eric Linus Kaplan is a co-EP on Young Sheldon, the show on CBS. And he posted online that he would be interested in doing a story structure class for Latinx writers. And his thought process was, people suddenly realized that Latinx people exist. We were invented in 2020. And he said, people want to give Latinx people opportunities. And he said, I don't want people to say, oh, they're not ready. People always want people with experience. And it's like, well, where do we get this experience if you don't give it to us? And so he said, I want to do this story structure class so that by the end of the class, there's a group of Latinx writers who I can say, well, I taught them story structure so they have a good head on their shoulders and can be in a room. And so I hit him up, and apparently not a lot of people had seen it. And he was like, well, if you can get a few people, I'll do it. So I hit up like every Latinx writer I knew, and I was like, get on this, fam. And he was doing this out of the kindness of his own heart. And at the time it was kind of loosely done. And I was like, I just kept nudging. And I was like, hey, what if we did this? And what if we did that? And magically that was it. I was the TA for the class. And suddenly he was like, okay, just ask Dominique. Dominique is the point person. And so I helped him structure the class. He brought his experience and I brought my ambitious self. And I created lots of opportunities for first hour class.
Yeah.
I started, Industry Insider really started as guest speakers for the class. And so and I was working for free. I'm already a med student. I already got lots of, I placed in the NBC fellowship. I already have all this quote unquote clout, but I'm not too fancy, right? This man is giving us this free class. So I helped him to, organize it and make it better for free for everyone else too. And so, I contacted people and said, hey, I have this name behind me now. Like I have a co-EP on Young Sheldon who I work with. It's a class for all Latinx writers. Would you be interested? Yeah. And my advice for asks, I didn't just do this to randos who I never spoke to. People who I had been following on Twitter for years, interacting with. So we weren't besties. I'm not going to pretend like every single person in the industry insider was my bestie. But I wasn't a stranger who like saw they were suddenly famous today and called and were like, oh, you're famous today. I want something from you.
Yeah.
And I wasn't asking for a script read either. That's a big ask, right? I said, hey, would you want to come talk to my class? And then I said, hey, if we record it, then we can have other people watch it. We have 10 people in class. YouTube can reach thousands of people, right? Yeah. So now anyone who wants that information can go on the Industry Insider series and watch the same thing that was really meant to be just for my class. But that's greedy. Why would we be selfish with that information, right? Yeah. How are we going to help people if we keep it only to our tiny group? Yeah. So I said, okay, we'll make the conversation. It's overwhelming to have a Zoom of 7,000 people. We'll make the conversation in our class. Like, this is really for our class. But then let's make it open to everyone else. It's taking away those barriers, right? No gatekeeping. Let's make this available to everyone else who wasn't able to be a part of the class. And it doesn't matter if you're Latinx or whatever you are, you can watch this and learn the same information we did.
And right now you have 2 episodes out, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we have 8 in the can, as they say, and I'm just publishing them as I go.
Got it. Wow. And earlier you mentioned that you're not prestigious, but you go to, what is it, Columbia University, University of Pennsylvania, and girl, prestigious, yes you are.
You're funny.
But I one thing I will say, like you really do for yourself is that you create these opportunities, you speak it into existence. That's exactly what you're doing. You're speaking things into existence. And I think a lot of people don't understand that you can do these things. Like you just put it out in the world and you make it happen. Like you set a goal and a reasonable time of like when you're going to reach this goal, and little by little you make things happen.
I really appreciate you saying that part, because I was going to say, like, there are reasons why I'm kind of able to do what I'm doing now. And it's because I have this long history. Like, people can go to my website and see all the things that I've done and they say, oh, she's legit, she's been doing this for a while. Sometimes people want to see that. And so I think sometimes people are like, well, I think I can do this, so I'm going to do it today. And it's not that you can't, it's just sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes people want to see that you're committed to this. Like a lot of these fellowships, for instance, when you apply to them, people who are already on the other side that got in, they're like, yeah, I applied 7 times. And they were great writers the entire time. They kept doing the work. They kept hustling the whole time. Same thing if you're applying to a directing fellowship, producer fellowship, if you're an actor. How many stories of actors who had 100 auditions before they booked something? They were talented the whole time. It's just, sometimes it's the opportunity that's right for you. Things come. And no one, something that I learned very young is that, especially, being a person of color and being whatever woman, just there's so many different ways that people will try to like hold you back. And something that I was always told was, no one can take away the knowledge you have. No one can take away the accomplishments that you have. And for every time that I've gotten something, someone else who's also very talented hasn't. So if there's a time that I don't get it, I can't sit there and be like, oh no, how did so-and-so get that and I didn't? That's not the right attitude. It's, how did so-and-so get that? Look at their journey. How can I level up like so-and-so, right? And sometimes people get mad because they think people have connections. Yeah, that's true. How do we make those connections, right? And that's part of what I'm trying to do with the Read Latinx Writers Initiative. I'm giving people that opportunity so now they have a connection, right? People think that's a bad thing. Like, oh, so-and-so had a connection. Most of the time when so-and-so had a connection, they also had a career before it, right? All the hustling, it's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. If it does, God bless, that's great. Then you know what? Please don't forget the rest of us down here. Pay it forward. Reach back, as they say. But don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen on the first time. As I said, when your first film that you make with your phone might not be the one.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
But the next one can be, you know.
Exactly,
That
because of what
yeah.
you learned.
Exactly. And lifting as you climb, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question for you is, who's someone that you look at as an influence in your career, in your journey, in your
Oh
life?
my goodness, these questions are always really hard. Because
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't want to forget anybody. And damn, where do I start? Ah, goodness. I gotta say, I'm very lucky to have, this really loving partner who is extremely ambitious and a lot like me in that, like, we have our other lives, but we also have our artistic lives. And I think it's really nice to be with someone who has a similar mind than me and is really supportive.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people who don't always. I think it's hard. Life of an artist is very, very hard, and other people will not understand it.
Oh, yeah.
And so, having someone in your life who understands it, who relates to the experience, has been really helpful for me, because sometimes I lose my nerve sometimes. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Right? Like, what was I thinking? This is hard. This is, it's not. So I had this ballet teacher who used to say immediate gratification. There is no immediate gratification
Yeah.
in our industry,
Yeah.
especially a film, right? A film gets made and a year later it's edited, a year later it's accepted to the festival circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were working real hard making this film on set, and then no one saw it for the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, right? And people are like, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, I promise I've been working real hard on this film.
Yeah.
But if people can't see it yet, sometimes people will doubt you and think like, oh, okay, so I think, like, as many people as you can surround yourself with, and they don't have to be the most famous person. If you look up to someone famous, that's great. But I think it's really important to have people who you have FaceTime with, who are supportive of what you do, who can encourage you, and people who, maybe if they don't do it themselves, people who will try to understand where you're coming from, people who will try to be a lifeline for you when they're hard days. Because you know what, I don't care what you are. I used to always tell my students, I don't care if you want to be a circus clown, if you want. I know someone like Cirque du Soleil people, they work hard. Circus is actually really hard. It's like a joke, but it's not. If you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be an astronaut, it's going to be hard, my friends. You have to be really passionate about it. You have to be happy. Life is very, very short, my friends. So you have to be able to find joy in the things that you're doing. And so surround yourself with as many people as possible who are going to help uplift you. And as I said, like, it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't have to be someone who everyone's heard of.
For me, wanting to do this talk show, a lot of people that I surround myself, they want to become journalists, investigative journalists, practitioners, artists or directors, producers. And I'm over here like, I want to be a talk show host. And it's like,
I love it.
But it's true. Like, I surround myself with people who are creative, who will understand that I have this goal and this dream, and they're like, do it. Like, you're gonna do amazing. Like, and continue to push me. Even 5 minutes before this interview, I'm like, hey, I'm nervous, and then they're like, no, don't be nervous. You got this. Like, you already did your research. We already practiced. We did this. They're like, what are you nervous about? Like, succeeding? And I was like, yeah, maybe,
Yeah.
And it happens like that. But I know if I didn't have people around me who weren't as creative, or who were more into like going into the stereotypic American dream, you go into a job that, like, you sit at a desk and answer phones and emails, then I wouldn't be as passionate as I am, or I wouldn't be as driven, or I wouldn't I wouldn't be here right now with you. And
yes.
Yeah.
And I got news for you. I did a lot of emails today. So no matter what you do, there's gonna be just sitting there answering emails. So you better be happy with what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
Administrative skills that you're building, right? People think that sometimes people have closed-minded opinions of what it means to be an artist. Most artists are business people. Most artists are very savvy. Yeah. And so look at you building those skills. I see you building those life skills that you can apply to so many different things.
Oh yeah. And it comes from, like, I just graduated college. In college, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I was hustling and bustling. I had 14 different clubs under my belt. I was on a leadership positions. I had an internship. I had 2 part-time jobs. At one point, I had 3 part-time jobs. And, like, do you get sleep? No, but
I know.
You know what? You're doing it. Yeah. And it's hard, but you live with it, and you just keep on pushing, because it's like, that's the dream. Like, the dream I'm okay without going to sleep and just dreaming it. I'd rather live it right now. I would rather work towards living it, in a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They, they see or they hear you and then they're like, so you have nothing going on right now. I'm like,
I think, as I said, it's about having joy. And it's just
mm-hmm.
sometimes people don't realize that that's what you can get joy out of just because they don't. Right.
Yeah.
And so it looks like a lot of work, and sometimes it is. And you have to take moments to realize the joy in the process, or else you'll like work, and then you'll hit a new goal. It's like what you were talking about a little bit earlier about like, look, I made an accomplishment. Love me. That's not always how it works. And sometimes you're not going to love yourself more because you had an accomplishment, right? Like you really, and something I always tell my students, it's like, I don't care if you get the answer wrong. I care if you don't try. Like I can respect someone who gets the answer wrong because you learn from that, right?
Oh yeah.
But I don't know how much I could respect someone who's not even trying. And that's a big part. Life is really hard. You got to wake up in the morning and just try, especially in a pandemic.
Yeah. That's the truth.
Shout out to everybody who tried today.
Exactly. I love that. We're talking a little bit about like our struggles. What has been like one of the biggest struggles that you have faced, and how did you just overcome it and try to overcome it?
You mean aside from the almost dying part?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. I'm like, which part of my soul am I willing to bear today? Yeah. Oh goodness. I think so. Without giving every single detail, because maybe I'm still working on that, right? And how I want to express myself about the things I've been through in life. But I've had some pretty big challenges in life. And there are things that like had nothing to do with what I did. Obviously, I've worked very hard in my life. And I always say, I got lucky, but 1% luck. 99% is you worked really hard. And then the 1% is they pick you, right? Yeah. Because there are a lot of people out there who've worked really hard, right? And then you're the 1% of luck that you actually were able to get through, right? And so with that 99% of hard work, I had this like disillusionment moment in my life where I was like, oh crap, I'm like this little Puerto Rican girl from Brooklyn. And like, I just didn't have certain things. And I was like, maybe I felt like, especially when I was like trying to get into med school, I was like, maybe this just isn't meant for me. And that's so sad now that I look back. It's just like, wow, I feel sad for myself that I felt that way. It's like, because I had a really strong personality. I was really confident. I had a really strong sense of self. It wasn't that I thought I wasn't smart enough. I knew I was smart enough. I knew I could work hard enough. I just thought it wasn't meant for me. I just thought this wasn't for you. Like you tried, you gave it like the good old try, but there's a reason that this is harder for you and it's just not meant for you. And it's so heartbreaking now because, I try to be a role model to people coming after me. And I had like one or two role models who were like, no, don't think that way. I had this one mentor. Oh my goodness. I'll never forget because, some people assume things because of my resume. You're assuming wrong. I did a lot of this on my own. I did this in spite of certain circumstances in life, not because I was not born into this. I will say this firmly without going into every detail. And I'll never forget, I was studying and this mentor called me and it was just such a big deal because no one really cared, about this goal I had to go into medicine. I didn't necessarily have a lot of people like cheering me on towards it. And so when she called me, I'll never forget that. It was something so small, that one phone call, and I don't even know if she realizes. And then, right, like and I remember being so sad that she didn't see me get into medical school because she passed away. And I remember just being so, so heartbroken because that was the person who I wanted to show. Sometimes, like you said, like I made an accomplishment, love me. And when she passed away, I was like, oh my God, I don't have this person to show. Who cares? Who's going to care that I got into med school? Like, why am I doing this if no one can care? And, I had to realize for myself that I care. This is something that I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. And so that's what I have to get into. And so I think I had to sort of re-up that, right? Like when I had to make my little life shift and say, okay, you're really sick. Medicine might not be the safest path for you as a high-risk person in the pandemic. So like, I'm still here and I'm going to finish up my degree, but I'm not necessarily going to pursue that as an occupation. And so, how can I use what I've learned to fulfill myself as an artist? And so being an artist was the same thing. It's like, you may not have someone who's saying, yeah, go do that, or patting you on the back. You have to pat yourself on the back. Like, you have to be really happy with your life choices, because no one else is living this life but you. Yeah. And it took me a long time to sort of realize that, like, it doesn't matter if I didn't, it's not what you look like, it's not what your life looks like. I used to think, oh, I wasn't born into this, so I can't do this. I didn't know women could be directors. I was like, hold on, what? And you could be in Hollywood without, like, your dad being in Hollywood? That's a thing? Like, what? And I mean, they're not really letting that many of us do that. That's why I created my initiative. That's why other initiatives are out there. But I was like, hold up. They let, like, Latinx people do this? They let women do this? Like, I was just like, wow. When I went to that first festival and I saw all these I met a lot of Latinx people. I was at the New York Latino Film Festival in New York. And I met all these people who went to film school, like, out the gate, like, for undergrad or for masters. And I was like, y'all did this as your first career? Like, this is an option? No one ever taught me this was possible.
Yeah.
If anything, it was like, no, don't do that. That's just heartbreak, because they don't let us in that door. That's what I got taught. Like, that door is not for us. And so that was the biggest obstacle to overcome, realizing that that's not a thing, right? Those doors, we're breaking them down. Anything is for us. If you do the work, if you're kind, if you're professional, it can be for you. It might take some time, but it can be.
A lot of people, I think, have that mentality of, like, it can't be for us. So the fact that you're breaking that, like, stereotype out and you're, like, kicking it out the window really is, like, so, like, just heartfelt. Because I'll say, I know a whole bunch of Latinx writers and producers who don't seem to get a chance because whatever it may be, and I mean, we're in LA, we're right next to Hollywood, and it's still like, hey, can you speak to me? You don't have time? Got it. Like, how do you break into it? And it's like, that initiative that you did, the Read Latinx Writers, is such a huge, impactful way to do that. And it's like, really, from going from the Bronx to medical school to doing your own films, producing, writing, acting, and directing, to, like, I'm gonna start this entire initiative that's gonna help 190 individuals, and I'm gonna do this all on my own. That's really what it is.
Like, I made it myself, right?
Exactly.
And I'm so proud of all of our participants. We already have people who are having one-on-one meetings with showrunners. We're already having people who have general meetings with studios. That's really big, and that's really hard to get. And some of that is whether I matched them with that studio, or if they were matched with a reader who read it and said, this is good, I'm gonna refer you, right? Those little connections are really turning into things. I've been able to, people know me as the person who knows all the Latinx writers. So a showrunner hit me up and was like, hey, we're looking for a very specific set of requirements. Do you have anyone? I read all of the bios, about 300 people, because not only did I read the mentees, of course I read the mentors too, because our WJ writers who are already established writers, they're people who want to keep working too. And so I read their bios too, and I said, okay, here's my people. I contacted them. I said, okay, do you fit these things? Send me a sample. I read the first page of their sample just to make sure that it, like, did fit what they said it did. And then I sent this showrunner a whole list of names, all from, not only from the people who signed up to be mentored, but also the people who volunteered to help. And so, you guys, as I said, you got to give to get. People didn't sign up thinking that I would, refer them for a job, but I did, right? And so it's so important, you got to keep paying it forward. It's a business of relationships.
Oh yeah. A lot of people don't understand when they are referred, like the time that the person who's doing the referral really puts into it. It's like, if I'm going to refer you, I'm going to make sure that, like, you as a writer are phenomenal. You as a person, you, like, have that personal connection, that passion, that drive. Because if I give so-and-so your name and your script, and then they're like, this Dominique, what is this? Like,
exactly,
it's your name now, like, so.
I'm really glad you bring that up,
yeah,
because something I think that people don't realize is that, like, a huge key to success it's just being personable. And I keep
Mm-hmm.
hearing that and thinking, well, I'm super personable. And it's not until I have people maybe not interfacing the way they should, not communicating in the most professional way possible, that I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is why people keep repeating this. And something that I said, and this is something that happens in other initiatives too. Sometimes people are really surprised. Someone said like, oh, this was actually really good. And I'm like, well, that shouldn't surprise you. Why wouldn't it be actually really good,
Yeah.
right? That, you know, people don't realize the microaggression that they're doing. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
but I realized this person wasn't trying to be rude.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that their other person they were paired with didn't present themselves in the way that's most professional. And they were a beginner writer. And so their script wasn't at the same level. And so I said, well, you know, there were no barriers in this program. This program was really first come, first serve. And as long as I had someone to match you with, you got matched.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say you had to win a contest. We have lots of contest winners, but I didn't say you had to. So people who wrote their first script ever got it read by like showrunners and professionals. Like, this is a big deal, your first script ever. And so I said, you know, there might be beginners. And that's why they're asking for notes. You're supposed to give feedback. So I can forgive you for not being a pro on day one at writing, for not being a pro at simply writing an email, all those things. By the time you're an adult, even high school students, I think, especially in like the digital age, they have that knowledge. They have that social currency. They have that professionalism currency.
Yeah.
I can't teach you that. I can't give you notes on that. I could, but then you have to be the one to follow up with it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just presenting yourself professionally changes how people think about you. So that can take a script that's maybe in the middle, and someone will say, well, this script is kind of in the middle, but I gave them notes and they're so professional. I can trust them to fix it up. So I'm going to send it. Right. And so someone with all the contest wins in the world who doesn't know how to speak to someone, you know, that might not go as far.
Yeah.
And again, someone who's maybe a brand new, it's just going to shoot up so quickly. And people look and they're like, well, how did so-and-so do it faster than I did? And sometimes a big part of it was just how you were just treating other people.
Yeah. You can teach people how to write, how to do their grammar, punctuation, and all that.
Exactly.
But you can't teach someone how to be a kind person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
respect is free. You might have to take a writing class or think you have to take a writing class to get better at writing. I was self-taught when I placed in the fellowship competition, right? So like, and now I've been lucky enough to take a class, and I'm still growing and I want to keep growing. But at the time, you know, there are a lot of free resources on the internet. You can read books. You can get them probably PDFs for free. You can probably get them for very, very cheap. A used book is like $2 these days, right? You can educate yourself if you want to. That's definitely challenging, but that's not the part that a lot of people have to overcome. Yeah. I think, right? How do you represent yourself? How do you represent others? Can I trust you?
Yeah.
Can I trust that if you're talking to a showrunner, you're not going to be disrespectful? You're not going to be entitled or arrogant, right? We talked about machismo earlier. I got to say it. I don't think I've had almost any trouble with cis women. I've had some trouble with cis men. Come on, my cis men, get it together. It's okay. It doesn't make you look weak to say thank you. It doesn't make you look weak to say sorry. Yeah. And one thing, I will say, women make mistakes. You know, people in my program even were like, oh, I was an hour late. The women who were 1 hour late said, I'm so sorry. I would love to still be considered, but I understand if I can't. The men who were 2 weeks late, making excuses, saying these things with like certain, it's just like, okay, that's not us. And I want to really emphasize the fact that I have 180 plus writers and they all did the right thing, right? Yeah. All my aspiring writers. But I can't afford the one person who doesn't want to act professionally interfacing with this industry participant and then making all of us look bad. You know, when I went to Colombia, I met a young man from New Jersey. And he told me, you're the first Puerto Rican person I've ever met in my entire life. Do you know the pressure? I literally am his only representation of any Puerto Rican person in the whole world. And he's from New Jersey. Like, he's not from like Indiana, New Jersey. And I was like, how is that possible? And he just lived a very sheltered life with a very specific homogenous group. And so now look at me representing every Latinx person, every Puerto Rican person he ever met in his life. Yeah. And so it's the same thing when, no matter who you are, whether you're in my initiative or not, when you send that email, when you interface with people in the industry, it's a lot of pressure, but you're holding all of us on your back.
That's
right?
the
And I
truth.
know it's a lot of pressure, but it's there.
Yeah. Last two questions before
Yeah.
everything. What is a piece of advice that you think not many people actually say that should be said more of?
Let me give me a second.
Yeah.
So we already covered the professionalism thing.
Yeah.
It's free 99. Say your pleases and your thank yous.
Yeah.
Right. And I think so. This is something, and I actually, what's funny, when we first met, I spoke to you about this. People don't. I brought this up earlier. Someone gets famous and like, oh, you're famous, so now I'm going to pay attention to you. There's this networking professionalism saying, not everyone can help you, but everyone can hurt you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes just because you don't recognize someone's name, it doesn't mean that they're not in a position to help you. And it doesn't mean they're not in a position to say, so-and-so was super rude, so-and-so. You never know. Mm-hmm. And for instance, some of the people who are on the mentor side of my initiative, their IMDb's don't actually show anything yet, but they've sold a couple of series. They're currently in development, so they're not allowed to talk about it with some of the biggest names out there. Like, I'm not going to say them because, as I said, we're not allowed, but they just told me so I would know who they were. Big names. Mm-hmm. And no one knows who that person is yet. Mm-hmm. That person is the next whoever you think is fancy. Mm-hmm. And it's like 2 months away from hitting deadline and hitting the Hollywood Reporter. You don't know what someone is doing today because that's how Hollywood works, right? Hollywood is everything. Oh, we can't say it until it's officially released, right? You have no idea who is working on something big. Mm-hmm. So it pays to just literally treat everyone the same. Mm-hmm. You are not bigger than anybody else. No one is bigger than you. And because that's also how, the industry is a big circle. One day you're at the top and one day you're at the bottom again. And that's okay. It's not that you were demoted. It's that, like, maybe as a director, you have a lot of experience, but as a writer, you don't. And that's why you need to start somewhere, right? Maybe you'll start in the middle, but you won't be the one leading the room. And that's okay. And so something we talked about, when we were at that networking event, everyone ran to this one person. And I saw this woman standing right next to him. No one was talking to her. So I said, hi, I'm Dom. She works with him. That she is the person who has his ear. Mm-hmm. And she brought me over to him, skipped the line, and was like, come meet Dominique. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do that on purpose. I just noticed that, like, there was a big line and she was right there. Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Dominique. That's all I did. And suddenly she decided to take me to the front of the line to go meet this person who runs a big studio, right? Yeah. And it's just literally just being decent.
Mm-hmm. It's, I actually remember that entire talk that we had from before. I remember that night, one of the honoraries, she's an anchor here in LA, and I remember her family was by the side of her while she's taking photos with everyone, signing different things. And I remember just seeing her mom, and I was like, have you taken a photo with her? Do you want me to take the photo? And she's like, yes, take a photo. And so I took her photo with her mom, and then her mom's like, do you guys want photos of my daughter? I was like, oh yeah, please.
Yes.
And she's like, okay. And so I remember it was just so funny. I felt like it was family, it was my own family, because she's over here here, let me hold your hat, because they gave out hats that day.
Yes.
So she's like, let me hold your hat and your booklet. And so for me and my two friends who were there, she held all of our stuff, and then her daughter took our photo with us, and then her daughter posted us on her Instagram.
Aww.
I'm like, what? It's just being kind, really, and talking to everyone, and not just thinking oh, this anchor, she's gonna get me in. She's,
exactly.
No. And do I still follow them? Yes, but it's not I'm gonna follow them so that way so and so day they're gonna do this for me, or they're gonna give me this, or they're gonna provide this. It's no, you follow them to follow them and see them grow. And
you know what, when because you're on your way, as when you're the honorary, you're gonna run into each other at an event in 5 years, and she's gonna remember you.
Yeah.
Right? People pay attention. I know there are people who I'll say oh, I'm doing this. I'm like, I know. And I'm like, and they're like, I've been keeping up.
Yeah.
People know. People talk. People are like, yeah, we've been talking.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just oh, okay. Right? I ran into someone in LA last summer in Starbucks, and it was a director I had worked with 5 years before, 6 years before, but I remembered him, and he was so excited to see me because I had no idea at the time. Apparently that was the first thing he ever directed in New York.
Oh. Whoa.
He is the director, like the director who directs a lot of the episodes of Supernatural. Right? And when I met him, that wasn't the case.
Uh-huh.
And then I ran into him, and it was so funny because he was like, and he was so excited to see me because, as I said, it was his first New York thing that he did. So he was like, "Oh wow, you remember me?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, you brought me on. I was like got tapped. I was like in a very small role, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to hang out with us and work with a helicopter?" And I was like, "Sure." And I told him, I was like, "I never worked with a helicopter before," and he's like, that was my first time too. He's like, and I haven't since. And so we had this little moment. And again, like, it's just, we got to know each other that day. I didn't hit him up asking him to give me things, but 5 years later, he remembered me and now we're in touch again. Right?
And it's like, even with you, like, yeah, I don't talk to you every single week or every month, but like, I keep up with like your website and your projects. And so it's like, okay, I'm starting my own, and like we're in a very similar space, you and I feel.
Yeah.
So I was like, I feel like I can definitely reach out to her and it would be completely fine,
Yeah.
And so that's really what it was. It's like a year later, year and a half later, and like, we're still talking, we're still doing this.
relationships.
Exactly. Just maintaining them and just like making sure that you're watering it every single, like, so often, and just like nurturing it really. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. And last thing before I let you go, is, so the way I like to end off my shows is by my interviewee finishing off the sentence. You have to be blank AF to.
You have to be kind AF to succeed.
I love that.
Kindness matters, y'all.
Yeah, it really does. But thank you. Honestly, like, it means the world to me for you to be here and just talking to you and just feeling like this past hour just has been a feel good moment, a feel good hour, really. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And if anyone wants to keep up, I am Dom_did_that on Twitter. And if you go to my Iron Glove Productions YouTube, you can watch all the industry insiders and get all that information I was telling you about.
Yes, please make sure to go and follow and subscribe. She has website, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all of it.
All the things.
And I'll add the apps too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for checking out this episode of Communications AF. To be kept up to date with the latest episodes, please subscribe here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast apps, and follow us on Instagram at Communications AF. I hope to communicate with you all soon, AF.